Oh, okay, I've noticed I hear this a lot when it's not stormy. Normally, when it's a clearing period, when there's no sort of abnormal weather, meaning mostly clear skies, and we hear these harp sounds. It sounds like a microwave pulsing in the background. This guy's picked it up on a shortwave radio. Take a listen. And so, my heart goes out to those people who have to get up early in the morning when they can't sleep when this kind of sound's going on. The sound that I hear is a little bit different. It's more like the sound of a microwave in the background, basically, but it's like right in your head. Can you imagine that? The sound of a microwave. It normally wakes me up if I'm sleeping.
The elephant in the sky. I mean, everybody on the planet is looking up and seeing this kind of spraying going on. I became involved in weather modification analysis due to my background as a weather observer in the United States Air Force. And as I was looking at the jet clouds in the sky, I realized that that's certainly not normal. And so I've been watching these abnormal clouds for a long time.
Well, I started to learn about geoengineering just in a very personal way. I decided to leave Washington in 1998. I bought a small property in a farming community in Tennessee, and I still had business in Washington, and so I would drive back and forth between Tennessee and Washington, but I was also driving around the country networking with a variety of people trying to understand what was going on in the economy. And as I was driving around, I saw this spraying, and literally you had planes crisscrossing in very unusual patterns. They'd fly back and forth, and you'd get this tapestry of crisscross spraying that would just hang in the sky for a long time. As an investment person, you're adding it up in your mind, okay, we have two planes over this county flying this many hours and spraying this much stuff. This is very expensive. Who's paying for this? And I was doing a lot of research at the time on a great deal of money that was going missing from the federal government on a covert basis. On one hand, you have all this money going missing, and on the other hand, you have this fantastically expensive spraying program going on.
The ongoing global climate engineering operations must be considered a new Manhattan Project on a scale that is almost inconceivable. Governments all over the globe are either actively or passively participating in the ongoing climate engineering insanity, all for their own reasons, all in the attempt to keep business as usual until the last possible moment.
Geoengineering is occurring, it's been occurring, it is not new, and your tax dollars are funding this. Well, my name is Kristen Megan Edwards. I am a U.S. Air Force veteran. I served 9 years on active duty working in bioenvironmental engineering. Upon my separation, which was honorably, I went and worked for the VA in the Veterans Health Administration as an industrial hygienist and an environmental specialist. So as an industrial hygienist, my job was to protect people from such things as heavy carcinogenic metals and hazardous materials. And through that, all items that came on base was approved through what is called an Air Force Form 3952, and that is a hazardous materials acquisition. So in order for a chemical to be brought on base, it had to be tied to a specific task. If people were painting aircraft, we knew where that paint was going and what it was being used for, and this was all for liability. So when you start to find constituents coming on the base that you're trying to remove from the base and engineer out through different industrial processes, that was a red flag for me and really told me to do my own research. I've often wondered with the large amount of people in all branches of the military who work in an environmental facet, why they aren't coming forward. I don't think a lot of people are connecting the dots. I wouldn't have stumbled upon why these constituents were being brought on base unless I had heard about geoengineering. So a lot of times I think people are supporting an operation but haven't really seen outside information to tie it to why this is going on. To see how much taxpayer dollars are used in military operations, whether they're peacetime or wartime, to see how much money is spent to reduce hazards, again, that affect human health and impact the environment, is a complete contradiction to geoengineering using wartime exemptions to not be cited through the EPA. This is a huge waste. This is fraud and waste from the U.S. government. And that this is allowed to go on, to me, is unbelievable.
I think it's one of the most dangerous, diabolical things that has ever happened to us. It's the most dangerous thing short of a nuclear cataclysm. So I take it very, very seriously, and will do everything I can to try and expose the problem and encourage people to do likewise.
Well, when I was growing up, I was really a fan of Kurt Vonnegut, and Kurt wrote some remarkable works, and I later learned that most of the fodder for that work came from the work of his brother, Bernard Vonnegut, who was a scientist at GE under Irving Langmuir, the lead scientist there. That work was focused on the production of ice crystals at elevated temperature using a compound called silver iodide.
I would like to take you into the laboratory and show you a few of the experiments that led us to our outdoor experiments in converting clouds into snow. These are some which I photographed that were formed in the laboratory. This is a picture of the first cloud that we seeded back last November. Putting dry ice from a small dispenser in the bottom of the plane, under many conditions, of course, full-fledged snowstorms will be produced in this way. Nature at last has permitted to do a little something about the weather.
These were something that scientists had worked on, developed through the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and was likely being deployed even today. The research done by Vonnegut and Langmuir coincided with changes in our sky. As these programs, or at least this type of research, increased, the skies started to change. My first real observation of those changes and real awareness of it came, I was looking up and saw patterned skies of these trails that were being laid out by planes, then developing into confluent layers that would drift perhaps hundreds of miles, changes the weather, changes the temperature around you. Also, the light intensity and the quality of light was changing. And it was funny that there was not really a lot of published literature on this material. There had been some governmental reports that I had dug into. There was some evidence that this type of research was being conducted,